There's a moment that happens when the noise fades, when the distractions stop working, when the scrolling feels empty, the conversations feel shallow, and even your goals begin to feel like borrowed dreams. You sit there, maybe late at night or early in the morning, and a strange thought creeps in. What am I actually doing with my life? Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to unsettle you. And then, like most people, you push it away. You open another app. You distract yourself. Because facing that question directly feels heavier than avoiding it. But here's the truth most people don't realize. That feeling of being lost is not a flaw. It's not a failure. It's a signal. A precise psychological signal that something in your internal system is misaligned. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes, not through words, but through confusion, procrastination, and a constant sense of drifting. You don't feel lost because you don't have options. You feel lost because you have too many and no internal compass to choose between them. This is where most people misunderstand their own mind. They assume clarity comes from finding the right path. But clarity doesn't come from outside. It comes from removing the noise inside. Think about it. Every day, your brain is exposed to hundreds of micro-influences. Social media, opinions, expectations, comparisons, subtle pressures. Each one plants a tiny seed. A suggestion of who you should be, what you should want, how your life should look. And over time, these seeds grow into something dangerous, not because they are wrong, but because they are not yours. So now you're standing in a life that feels unfamiliar. Not because you failed to build it, but because you built it using someone else's blueprint. And this is where the real problem begins. Your brain is designed to avoid uncertainty. It craves patterns, predictability, familiar loops. So even when you feel lost, you unconsciously repeat the same behaviors that keep you there. You wake up, check your phone, consume information, feel slightly overwhelmed, delay important actions, and then escape into comfort. Not because you're lazy, but because your mind is trying to protect you from the discomfort of not knowing who you are. This is the first brutal psychological truth. You are not stuck because you lack motivation. You are stuck because your identity is unclear. And when identity is unclear, every decision becomes heavy. Every action feels optional. Every goal feels fragile. This is called decision fatigue, but not in the way most people understand it. It's not just about making too many choices. It's about making choices without a stable internal reference point. When you don't know who you are, even simple decisions become exhausting. Should you work or rest? Start or wait? Commit or explore? Each option feels equally uncertain. So your brain chooses the easiest path, delay. And delay slowly turns into a lifestyle. You tell yourself you'll figure it out later. You tell yourself you just need more time. But time doesn't create clarity. Time only amplifies patterns. If your current pattern is avoidance, more time just deepens that loop. This is why years can pass and nothing changes internally. But there's something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Something most people never notice. Your brain keeps track of unfinished intentions. Every goal you start but don't complete. Every promise you make to yourself but break. Every idea you abandon halfway. These are called open loops. And they don't disappear. They stay active in your subconscious, quietly draining your mental energy. So now, even when you sit down to think about your life, you don't feel clear. You feel heavy, overloaded, slightly anxious for no obvious reason. It's not random. It's accumulated psychological weight. This is why being lost doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like pressure. And here's where it gets even more subtle. Most people try to fix this by doing more. More planning, more consuming, more thinking. But thinking is often the problem, not the solution. Because when your mind is overloaded, thinking turns into overthinking. And overthinking doesn't lead to clarity. It leads to paralysis. You analyze every possible path, every possible outcome. You imagine success, failure, judgment, regret. And eventually, your brain does what it's designed to do. It protects you by stopping you. So you don't move. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to associate stillness with safety. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment. But what you're really doing is avoiding emotional risk. This is the second brutal truth. You don't feel lost because you don't know what to do. You feel lost because you're afraid to commit to one version of yourself and let the others go. Because every decision is also a loss. Choosing one path means rejecting another. And rejection, even self-imposed, creates discomfort. So you stay in between. Not fully committed. Not fully detached. Just drifting. But drifting has a cost. When your actions are inconsistent, your brain stops trusting you. This is one of the most overlooked psychological mechanisms. Self-trust is not built through intention. It's built through evidence. Small, repeated actions that prove to your mind that you follow through. Without that evidence, your brain labels your future intentions as unreliable. So even when you feel motivated, there's a quiet voice underneath that says, "You won't stick to this anyway." And that voice shapes your behavior more than motivation ever will. This is why discipline feels so difficult. Not because it's inherently hard, but because your internal system doesn't believe in your consistency. But here's the shift most people miss. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to act. It's about reducing the resistance to acting. It's about designing your environment, your habits, and your expectations in a way that makes action feel natural, not heroic. Right now, your life likely relies on bursts of motivation. You wait until you feel ready, inspired, or pressured enough to act. But motivation is unstable. It rises and falls based on mood, energy, and external triggers. Consistency, on the other hand, is built through systems. Small, almost insignificant actions repeated daily. Actions so simple that your brain doesn't resist them. This is where micro-habits come in, but not in the way people usually talk about them. A micro-habit is not just a small action. It's a psychological doorway. It lowers the activation energy required to begin. And once you begin, something interesting happens. Your brain shifts from resistance mode to engagement mode. Starting is the hardest part. Not because the task is difficult, but because the transition from inaction to action triggers discomfort. So instead of trying to change your entire life, you change the entry point. You make it easier to begin. And when you repeat that enough times, something deeper changes. Your identity begins to shift. Not through affirmation, but through evidence. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to figure things out and start seeing yourself as someone who takes action, even when uncertain. And that changes everything. Because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Every small step you take gives your brain new data, new feedback, new signals about what works, what doesn't, what feels aligned, and what doesn't. Without action, your mind can only imagine. And imagination, when unchecked, often leans toward fear. But action grounds you in reality. This is where another powerful mechanism comes into play. Environmental cues. Your behavior is heavily influenced by your surroundings, often more than your intentions. If your environment is designed for distraction, you will feel distracted. If it's designed for focus, you will feel focused. This is not about willpower. It's about design. The less friction there is between you and the action you want to take, the more likely you are to take it. The more friction there is between you and distractions, the less likely you are to fall into them. So instead of trying to control your mind, you shape your environment. And slowly, your behavior follows. But the deepest shift, the one that truly pulls you out of feeling lost, is this. You stop asking, "What should I do with my life?" and start asking, "What kind of person do I want to become?" Because goals can fail. Plans can change. But identity persists. When your actions are tied to identity, they become stable. You don't act because you feel like it. You act because it's who you are. And identity is built through repetition. Not perfection. Not intensity. Repetition. Quiet, consistent, almost invisible repetition. This is the part no one talks about. The part that doesn't look impressive. The part that doesn't feel dramatic. But it's the only thing that works. Because the truth is, you don't find your path in a moment of clarity. You build it through a series of small, aligned decisions. And yes, it will feel uncertain. It will feel slow. Sometimes, it will feel like nothing is changing. But something is changing. You are. And that's where everything begins. So if you feel lost right now, don't rush to escape that feeling. Don't numb it. Don't hide from it. Sit with it for a moment. Let it reveal what's been ignored. Let it show you where your actions and identity have drifted apart. Then do something small. Not to fix your entire life. Just to prove to yourself that you can move. One action. One step. One decision. And then repeat it tomorrow. Because the way out of feeling lost is not a sudden realization. It's a quiet reconstruction. And it starts the moment you stop waiting to feel ready and start becoming the person who moves anyway. If something in this resonated with you, don't just let it pass. Take a moment, right now, and ask yourself one honest question. What is one small action I've been avoiding that I know matters? Then do it. Not perfectly, just intentionally. Because your life doesn't change when you find the answer. It changes when you become the person who acts on it.